Welcome to the Film Board, the movie conversation podcast reviewing the latest releases that you've seen and want to talk about. My name is Andy Nelson, host of the Next Reel Film podcast. On this episode, to celebrate Father's Day, we're talking about Paul Weiss's new film starring Kevin Hart, Fatherhood.
Excuse me. She's been crying for hours.
Sorry, but this is a group for new mothers.
On that sign out there, it says parents. I'm a parent and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Girl's got some stuff flying out her ass, so she can either hit you with a streamer or she'll buckshot you. It's a quick whop. I need help.
I don't know how you're gonna do this.
If you could have only one parent, I wish you could have had your mom, because she would have been better at it.
And mommy was the best.
Go to sleep, Maddie. Maddie, go to sleep. Maddie, go to sleep. Go to sleep, Maddie.
It's not working though. She's not a clapper.
Matthew, darling, we think you should move back to Minnesota. You're all alone here. She needs family. Raising a child, it's a non-stop, all day, all night affair.
I look.
You look great.
Don't say it just to be saying it.
You look like a king. King in a sling.
Wake up, Daddy! How does it look?
I think it's a new look. I think it's a new hairstyle that can catch on if given a chance.
Mr. Logan, Madeline doesn't have a mother to model after.
I am well aware of what my daughter doesn't have.
You think you can do this, but you can't.
No, man, you're right. I can't do it. But you know what? I'm going to do it because I'm a father.
Andy, have you heard about these membership plans we have over at the Next Reel?
Membership plans? Tell me more.
For just $1 a month, that's practically nothing. You can become a one-reeler member and get access to member channels over on Discord.
But I'm already a member on Discord.
Yeah, but you don't have access to the special channels.
Ooh, so what's on these special member-only channels?
You know that Saturday matinee show?
Oh yeah, the one I get every Monday when the hosts talk about news and trailers, play movie-related games, and then they challenge each other with their lists of films related somehow to the movie that we reviewed that week?
That's the one. Members get access to the Show Talk channel where they can vote on these lists each week.
Wait. You mean there's a vote? I love voting. Mama always said, vote early and vote often.
Now, if you bump your membership to the two-reeler tier, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same you'd pay for a fancy coffee drink, you get so much more.
Oh, what more is there?
Two-reelers not only get everything the one-reelers get,
That's a given.
but they also get access to live streams to watch the shows when they actually record, or anytime thereafter.
You mean I have to stop doing this in my bathrobe?
Two-reelers also get to be a part of the pre-show chat with hosts before every Film Board episode.
I like it.
Two-reelers get every show before regular listeners and without ads.
Oh, you mean they don't have to sit through this? Count me in.
But the best benefit of all, members get bonus member-only episodes.
I love that.
It's an exciting time to be alive. What can I say?
So how do I sign up?
It's easy. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership?
thenextreel.com/membership. Access to member-only channels in Discord, early access to shows, access to live streams, and member bonus episodes. Sign up today.
Today, I'm chatting with Ocean and Steve to get their thoughts on this movie so we can share them with all of you. Welcome.
It's great to see you both this fine morning so we can discuss not only the movie Fatherhood, but probably share some of our experiences of fatherhood as well.
Yes.
I love your thinking on that, Ocean. And Steve, hello.
Hey, good morning. Good to talk to you again, Andy, and happy early or belated Father's Day, I guess, depending on when this posts, right?
And depending on when people are listening to it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're here to talk about Fatherhood. It was another of the films scheduled to release a year ago, but of course it ended up getting its delays due to COVID. And now here we are. Sony and Columbia Pictures said, you know what? You can take this, Netflix. So here we are watching this movie that was released on Netflix just the other day to celebrate Father's Day. So let's get our initial thoughts. Ocean, let's start with you.
Yeah. My initial thoughts of this movie, oh goodness. I didn't like it. So I think that, I had several issues, with this movie in terms of how it portrayed not only, not only how it portrayed Matt's character in terms of how he handled and went about things with parenting and fatherhood in this, horrible, having this situation come up. Your daughter is born, and then the next day the mother of your daughter dies. Right? Absolutely horrible. Horrible situation, but. I think that there was a kernel of a movie in here from when I looked up more about the original story and kind of what was going to happen here. But what this movie really gave us was a vehicle of a movie that was supposed to show you kind of like the hard parts of fatherhood, maybe the trials and tribulations, some ups and downs, what the struggles you're going to go through, and then how that's going to then pay off and be good at the end, and decided to instead show us, hey, here's all those crappy parts about being a father of a baby, all just right together. And we're not going to say anything redeeming about this. We're not going to say anything funny about this. We're just going to show you the horrible parts of parenthood and roll credits.
Okay. Steve, did your reaction seem similar or a little different?
It's pretty similar. And I was after I finished this, I thought, okay, where did this come from? Because it felt like it wasn't digging into the real stuff that I would want. From the trailer, I thought, okay, you're giving me the highlights and you're presenting it as a Kevin Hart film, so you've got to throw in some of the funny, but then you've got to have sort of the tear-jerking parts. And after I finished it, I thought it didn't go deep enough into a lot of stuff, and so I thought, why? And then I saw, this is based on a true story. And then I dug further. And I was like, I know this guy. I mean, I don't personally know him, but on the Reply All podcast, they did an episode about Matt Logelin because of his wife died, and he was writing a blog, and one of the images from his blog got pulled and sort of scraped and used in those like junky, spammy, like it looks like an article at the bottom of a website thing where you're like reading a news article and then it's got something else on there. His image off his blog got appropriated for that, and he was trying to get it taken down off the internet, which to me is a so much more interesting story than this movie. And so I'm right there with Ocean. It told a story, but it didn't engage me. It didn't give me anything new. It didn't challenge me. It didn't give me anything about Matt growing as a person or as a character. It just was like, there was this guy and these things happened to him. End of story.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with both of you. It was a very frustrating film for me because I loved this cast. Like, I thought everybody in the cast was doing such great work. Unfortunately, they were doing great work on a script that was it was playing not just by the numbers, but it was almost it felt like it was trying to recreate all of the numbers that had already gone before it. It just felt so standard and expected, and it was so frustrating. And I'm like, Dustin Hoffman did all of these bits already back in Kramer versus Kramer, a much better film. Why are we rehashing all these same beats? Yeah. It's like. And I felt like, have we not seen any growth in fatherhood since 1979 when that film came out? It's like it's the exact same place that we find this person, and I get it. It may be the real story of Matthew Logelin was that he just was this clueless when it came to dealing with the child, but it just felt like the whole beginning of the film when Maddie the baby is still an infant. It felt very much like he doesn't know how to change a diaper. He doesn't know how to set up a crib. He doesn't know how to open a stroller. He doesn't know how to feed the baby properly. Like all these things. I'm like, seriously, are we going to go play by play through all of this stuff? Or are we going to have anything that stands out as showing me something authentic here? And that was what was so frustrating for me. I just didn't feel like I was given anything authentic. And it just really frustrated me because, again, I really enjoyed watching Kevin Hart in this more serious type of role. I'm like, he can carry it. I buy his emotions. I buy him as this person in this situation. And I thought there was a lot of authenticity there. Same thing with the rest of the cast. It's a cast full of people I love. Alfre Woodard, yeah. I've always loved. And she was just great as that mother-in-law who was kind of trying to get the baby herself, just like the way that played was really, really interesting.
Yeah, I found I had problems with how that played.
Okay. In what sense?
In this sense. And so here's the thing. So Alfred Woodard's character, first off, that, I'm going to echo everything you said about the acting. I think that a lot of the performances, the acting was good. The story and the script was the problem here. I think that, and Alfred Woodard's character to me is emblematic of the major problem of it in that, so they took this woman who's now has gone through the worst thing imaginable, right? Like, the death of my child, that's the worst, right? Because I'm like, you are burying me. I am not burying you, right? So she's gone through this and she is, mourning and grieving as well in this. But the way it plays, she's really just the villain. She is an overbearing woman who is coming in trying to steal this man's baby. And you're like, why are you trying to take this man's baby? And it's like, well, wait a minute. If you can step back for a second and maybe show a little bit of a fuller picture of, kind of how her emotions and feelings are with this and how the devastation she's going through with the loss of her child and how really I think really what she would want is just like, she's just trying to get everybody, close. Like this is one of my last, this grandbaby represents my last family, close family. And I want everybody close and I want to be together and I want us all to grow and mourn and live and be together. But really she just comes across as a villain who is saying, I think you're a horrible person. Well, definitely a horrible father. You're not going to be able to take care of this baby, that if we leave the baby with you, the baby's going to be dead in a week, I guess. I don't know what she thought. Right. And so, but it made her an unsympathetic character in a scenario where she should have been a sympathetic character. Like Mike, Frankie Faison's Mike was sympathetic. His character was written in a better manner where you did feel, hey, he is suffering this massive loss, but still trying to be supportive of the other situation and recognizing that others are going through it as well. But the Alfred Woodard character, whose name I'm blanking on right now.
That'd be Marion.
Okay, Marion. Yeah. I did not like how she was so unsympathetic and really almost the bad guy in this movie where she should not have been.
Well, they tried to there was like one line where they tried to give some background to that, which is early on, I think, like at the wake or whatever. And Matt says something about, God's plan, and Marion's like, plan, she's like, we had a plan, Liz was going to do this. She was going to come back. She was going to go to grad school. She had these career paths, all lined up. And then she met you and you guys got married and it derailed that. And so I had the sense of Marion had this, storybook plan for her daughter, and Matt was the one that derailed that. So that created this tension. But then we never come back to that. Yeah, it humanized her for a second, but you're right. They played the rest of it as she's the villain. She's the mother-in-law. They've got the mother-in-law, son-in-law conflict. And I thought, no, there's something there. And it was emblematic of everything else that happens in this movie. Of it drops a seed of something and then fails to really dig into it. Because I wanted more about Marion's struggle and her coming to terms with what her hopes and dreams were, and how that got derailed. And maybe there would be some way for her and Matt to grow together as characters in their shared loss and grief. But it doesn't do that. It goes for like caricature almost in that relationship.
That's the problem with it, because I love what Alfred Woodard's doing. I love the way that she plays the character. It's just, you're right. It's not really well structured. It's not interesting because she's introduced as kind of a villain, as you said. I don't mind that either. I think that could make for a really interesting film if we have this constant conflict between these two characters, but it would actually have to go the length of the film. As it stands, it's set up for this point just through the first act, really, where she's suddenly like, you know what, you're doing okay. And then that was kind of it. I'm like, that's all we're going to get of her kind of with this issue that she has. And then we have that moment, which I really liked, when Matt comes and visits them, and I think it's maybe for the baptism, and he's talking to her in his deceased wife's old room. And she's just like, when she first died, I would spend every day in here, and now I only allow myself an hour. I was like, that's interesting. Like, there's something there, but it never goes anywhere, because then it's like, I don't know. I kept feeling like, is there conflict about this room or not? Because he seemed to be drawn to the room. She was drawn to the room. But then when he comes later to bring Maddie there to stay with them, now it's Maddie's room. And he seems like he might be bothered by that, but it's not really brought up anymore. And so it's just like, there are all these little pieces in here that could make for a really interesting story, but it's like they don't take any of these threads and do anything with them. So it's all just kind of laying there.
Well, I wondered if it's suffering from the fact that it is based on his book, his story, and we want to stay true to what his story was, and as a result, we just get rid of any entertainment or dramatic conflict in that because we need to stay true to what happened to Matt. So things that in the moment can feel really stressful and drawn with conflict, when you reflect on it, you can go, oh, well, that wasn't really that. I looked at all of this and said, okay, yeah, that's life. We all went through, as parents, we all went through these types of things of, I'm feeling incompetent as a father. I have a conflict with an in-law. Like, yeah, we all did this. You haven't elevated this to something where I'm like, wow, he's really struggling with something unique. I'm like, this is life, buddy. This is not that hard. I mean, it is, but we all deal with it. What makes you special? What makes this story worth telling, since many people have gone through something similar? I didn't get a sense of, here's the takeaway, here's his enlightenment, here's his knowledge gained at the end of the journey, or here's some heightened drama to create something that's really entertaining and engaging as a viewer to see what's going to happen next. There was nothing pulling us through. There was no overarching conflict for Matt. I'm like, okay, he's a programmer. He's got to keep his job. I'm like, okay. If I had meetings with important clients and my kid's throwing stuff at me and I have to walk away from a Zoom meeting, and I'm going to get promoted at the end of all that, I was like, dude, do you know how lucky you are? I mean, you don't have conflict. I mean, I'm sorry, okay, it's Kevin Hart. The real Matt Loughlin is a white dude. And I'm like, dude, white people problems. I'm just like, you have nothing hard. Even the one piece I thought it could have really dug into is when he goes into that parent group meeting and it's all moms.
Yeah.
And they're like, you don't belong here. I'm like, okay, let's explore the idea of single parenting as a father and the social, norms about moms and dads and all that. There's something interesting. That if we're going to talk about fatherhood, let's talk about single parenting as a dad and those things. And what does that mean? But yeah, it tiptoes around all the stuff to just give us.
Yeah, the moms group was definitely a wasted opportunity because there was a lot there, right? You could have had it where, you have the nugget of, this is where he learns about baby being colicky, which is the type of things, so there are aspects of this, what I'm with you, like, okay, you're completely clueless about being a father, but there is, like, I didn't know what colicky babies were until I had one,
yeah.
Right? So that is a kind of thing where you may not just know that, right? And but that instead of saying that and making that where that would become part of his support group, they're just a throwaway scene, right? They're oh, you now know why your baby's crying, and then they're never seen from again. And it's like, well, no, you would, I mean, I know I'm projecting here, but I'm thinking in this scenario, if you have a friend group amazingly that has in your mid to late 30s, and amazingly none of your friends have kids, that you have, that you're in that friend group, that you meet these women who have kids and are going to be going through a lot of the same things that you're going through. There's a lot there. You learn more and more things, you learn things along the way, and that helps you improve as you are taking care of and rearing an infant, right? And so, yeah, there was a lot there that they just said, hey, here's this nugget of a really good idea that we're going to do nothing.
Well,
with.
they did it. I mean, Michael Keaton did it. They did it really well in Mr. Mom, where it's like he bonds with the other moms. I mean, that was one of the things, and that was, that was 40 years ago we tackled that, right? And, here it is. We can't even make progress on, on that. And that I think would have been interesting to look at in 40 years, dad's parenting and we haven't changed our perceptions of that. What does that look like for a guy in 2020, networking with moms? it's ripe for all kinds of humor and story, interesting character growth.
There's a lot of potential, but again, the potential requires you to do something new and to bring something to the table that we haven't seen countless times before. It's like, does he really need to be this completely clueless? Like, did they not go to any, like, kind of the stuff that you do before you have the baby?
Right. Yeah.
Now I get it. They're setting us up. He hasn't even built the crib and the baby's due or going to be delivered right now. It's like, okay, he's not with it. He's not aware of kind of what's going on. But I feel like if you're at this point where your wife's about to have a baby, you would be a lot more together than you are right now. You would have a better sense of this. You would know there are these resources out there that you can tap into. And I just felt like they just constantly played it to be just so clueless, and just it just was so frustrating. And part of this comes from my frustration with Paul Weitz. He and his brother Chris, they co-directed About a Boy, which is just one of my favorites. I really love that film. And then, I think they may have co-directed a few things here and there, but largely the two of them, when they direct, they're now kind of directing solo. And I don't feel like that either of them have really done much great as far as solid films that they have actually directed since then, other than maybe A Better Life, which Chris directed in 2011. But I just like, I wish that, I don't know what it is with the pair of these two. Like, what's it going to take for them to actually really tell a great story again? And maybe it's just not in them. I don't know. But this is just one where I'm like, I just felt like if you're pulling from this source material and this is what you're going to get, then maybe dump the source material, come up with a fresh angle and tell a story that's original and interesting, because you're wasting a great cast in a film that just does nothing. It just isn't doing a thing here. And it's so frustrating from start to finish. Do either of you follow Paul or Chris Weitz at all as far as directors and what they do as writers or directors?
I know the names. I'm looking at filmographies and I'm like, yeah, it's stuff that I either saw and it forgot. Like, oh yeah, I couldn't tell you what American Dreams was about. I mean, it was some type of American Idol thing. Or I didn't see it because it looked not that interesting to me. So no, I agree. About a Boy was a great film, but yeah, I'm looking here. It's again, and we talked about this, I think it was probably on Trailer Rewind or another film board. We talked about, okay, it's a competent film, right? So, I mean, there's nothing I can say like was poorly, it's got a weak story, but everything else, it's competently done. So I give them credit for that, but it should be more, right? I mean, there should be more to than, okay, shots were, well lit and, framed and everything. And there's a sequential series of events and all of that. And you've got talented actors that are delivering compelling performances. But that's like, to me, like, that's entry level, right? Okay, that's the bare minimum. And from this cast, I would expect more. From an experienced director, I would expect more. I mean, there's hints of things in here. The whole dress code thing, I thought, okay, there's something interesting because we keep coming back to it. But even the resolution of that, I don't know. I'm not given enough that I guess they changed the dress code. I don't know why. It gave us some insight into his character with his whole, we don't need rules. And, his daughter takes that mentality, and the fact that she's, wearing boys' pants and boys' underwear. Okay. There's something there. Let's explore that. Let's give us more to that, because that's very interesting. That, again, it gets into the struggles of a parent of being the role model. And if there's no mother in the picture, how do as she's growing up, as a girl, what are those things?
Yeah, I agree with you that there is something interesting there. I think they're trying to maybe make a progressive statement of some kind where, girls don't have to just wear dresses. And boys don't just have to wear pants, but at the same time, you're right. It's done so in a ham-fisted manner. Even the idea of like, we don't need rules. Well, no, you do need rules. You can say, we think this specific rule should be changed and here's why, right? And we can then maybe try to address that and make that into an interesting point of conflict or something where there can be a dialogue about it, or, why she should be able to be, why she should wear pants instead of the dresses, or, there are things you can do with this, right? But you should just basically say, we're just going to thumb our nose at authority in this specific manner for no real particular reason, it isn't really a compelling story. And it isn't really even, like when I look at it as, from a parenting standpoint, I'm like, well, that's not even really a great message, because you're not explaining why she should do that, or, maybe, or anything, or any context of anything about, what this could be narratively is just completely left on the cutting room floor. And so what we're left with is what you just said. We have a thing of where she's not going to wear a dress. She wants to wear pants. So the one day she wears a dress, horrible things happen to her. And then all of a sudden the school's like, okay, well, she can wear pants. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay. I feel like I missed a couple of meetings or some conversations or something, because we just kind of went from A to Z. Yeah. And I don't know how we got there or why we're there or what is it saying when he shows up in a skirt, right? Like, what are we saying here? It's like, and honestly, it felt like to me, like that was a moment of, hey, we're going to try to use, because Kevin Hart is funny. So we're going to try to use him to do a funny thing that then isn't funny. Right. And that was to me a lot of the problem with this, where you took, Kevin Hart and put him in this dramatic role, which I agree he did a great job with, but also he does have a lot of comedic ability. And so, hey, you can sprinkle in some funny in this movie, and they did not. Right. There wasn't funny.
There was some in there.
Really, at any point. Okay. Yeah. So I can't think of one. So if you can think of a moment that was funny, please share. But yeah,
come on. I love the little it's not like overtly, funny sort of stuff, but just like when he and Swan are talking and they have that cute little exchange about, I was going to leave the flowers out here, but you have flower thieves out here. I didn't want to say anything. Like there were cute little things like that. It was just, I wouldn't say it's jokes, but it's cute. Yeah.
Okay. There were cute things. I'll give you that. Okay, all right. I will concede there were cute things there. And also with Swan, she was great. Oh, yeah. I thought that she was, DeWanda Wise as Swan. She was great. She was engaging every time she was on the screen. She really, captivated my attention. I thought she did a great job performing a role, and I think she really brought a lot to her role. That's a tough role of, hey, I'm going to date and then fall in love with a man who has a young child with a woman that died, the day after the childbirth and everything. And I want to try to incorporate myself
into
this family,
have
get the
dead wife's
like
name.
Yeah, same name.
Exactly. And I had right. So you had to come up with this other name to then call me, so it's not too weird or anything, So yeah. So I think that there was, that little nugget of story there, like, Swan's story, for lack of a better term, was one aspect of the film that I thought, okay, well, this I like in terms of what they're doing with this character and how to try to bring her into, ingratiate herself into it. Now, I was not a fan of most of the reactions to her in some of the things, especially, the whole, like, in a sense, blaming her for Maddie falling in the playground, right? And then being like, well, because that happened, then I wasn't there to answer the phone. We have to be broken up. That was, an overreaction, but okay. But yeah, I felt that I agree with you that there was some cuteness in their interactions with her. Anytime, Swan was interacting with Maddie, I thought that was, cute and kind of well done. And so that was like the one nugget of this movie that I was like, hey, they did this part, to say something positive. They did this part, I think, a decent amount of service.
Andy, let me ask you a question, sort of structurally, since we're sort of digging into story and all this, but things that Ocean is talking about, he talks about Swan's story, it just sort of got me thinking, we've got all these spheres of Matt's life, but none of them seem to like impact each other, because I'm thinking his relationship with Swan, why isn't, what is Marion's reaction to that going to be? Or things that are going on at work, because at the end, I'm like, did he quit his job because he doesn't go on the flight to Croatia, and then he, resolves things with Swan? But I'm like, are there no consequences? It's like when he's not in that sphere of work or with Swan or with Marion or his friends, it's like, I don't see actions there having repercussions or consequences in any of the other stories. So there's no, like, I learned this lesson with my daughter, it's going to help me at work, or I learned something at work that's going to help me in my relationship. I could pull them all apart or take one out, and I don't think the movie would suffer because there's no interconnection. Isn't that something that a film should do, is like the A plot and the B plot? There should be some connection?
Well, I mean, ideally, yeah, it'd be nice to have a film that set stuff up and that I felt like there were proper payoffs with these elements. And I just don't, I feel like all of the elements in the story are kept at a distance from one another. So you have the story that, of Matt dealing with his relationship with Miriam, and how that relationship is kind of playing out as far as kind of the relationship and how he's thinking that he might leave Maddie there to take this job. And then you have this whole relationship plot, but like those two never come into contact with each other. He never really talks to Marion about the fact that, hey, I am actually dating this woman now. And I don't know. I felt like these things were weirdly kept apart, and it just didn't need to be. I just feel like they're not trying to say anything. And it's the relationships, like none of this stuff was structured in a way where there's connections between the various stories that we have going on in his life, nor do we have it leading to something that is actually, revealing or telling us something. Like we don't say at the end, like you said, is he quitting his job? He just runs away from the flight, but is he quitting? Is he getting Maddie and now he's going to take her? Like it's unclear what's happening. And if you look at like what happened with the real Matthew Loughlin, he did quit his job and then he goes overseas with his daughter for a few months. So it's like, well, so why don't we kind of build on what's going on here in the film? And it's not doing anything. And that's, I think, in context of the way that the film is structured, they didn't have a good handle on the story itself. I mean, they had some interesting flashbacks. I actually liked the way that we would get periodic flashbacks to his time with his wife. And, like those moments, largely those happened earlier in the film, but they were nicely done. But then we get to this point where it's just like, we just have all these disconnected elements of his life, and it doesn't lead to a real sense of growth for Matthew. Because at the end, what are we learning from him? That he is afraid to, basically it's telling us, don't leave your daughter behind because you can't live without it, and your life is nothing. It's like, I don't think that's really a good message. And I don't think that it's done in a way where it's really kind of guiding, making us feel like this character has grown at all.
No. And, as all guys know, no matter how bad you screw up in a relationship, if you show up with flowers and, are witty, then clearly that just, you win her back right away. I mean, clearly, no matter how much of a jerk you were, admitting you're wrong and some flowers is all it takes to reconcile and to go out for ice cream right after, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no sign, not like, hey, you know what, I've started talking to a counselor, a grief counselor, because clearly I kept saying, who's going to tell him to go to a grief counselor? Because this is clearly a person who needs grief counseling.
Yes. Yeah. And okay, so one other question, and again, because I may have missed things, but, the whole reason that Maddie wanted to go in to live with Marion and Mike and all of that. Matt seemed to be like accepting of that because he's like, look, they did a great job of raising Liz. Clearly I can trust them. I can leave her there. But then he finds the necklace that Maddie has lost and then shows up with that. And then she's like, oh, well, you found the lost necklace. Okay, I'm ready to come home. And I thought, did I miss something with Maddie in terms of why she was done dealing with, she wanted to go with the grandparents and all that. I know she wanted to have like, where's our people, all that. But to me, I didn't understand enough about the necklace maybe, or is it just, it's not there?
Well, some of it is not there. The thing with the necklace with Maddie is, there's parts of this where I'm like, okay, she's, I think 7, right? So 7-year-olds are flighty, right?
Sure,
so,
yeah.
they
blame it on the 7-year-old.
To make life, if you allowed them to make life decisions, it's like, well, see, one week your family would move to Disneyland,
right, yes,
and the next week your family would move to Disney World. They just change what they do. So that part to me. That part for me felt fine. It was kind of like, hey, I felt this way today. I wanted to be here with them at that and everything. You were gone for a day or two. Now you're back. Now I want you today. That all's fine. The thing to me that I didn't like about that whole aspect of it was you had the conversations about the expectations of him as a father and how he wouldn't be able to, succeed or do, be able to handle being a father. Right. And I think that, so, that bothered me that his entire friend group thought that he would be worthless at this, and they were surprised that he kept her alive as long as he did. And then 2, I had a problem with the structuring of the story, right? In that, so when you stopped and thought about it for a second, it's like, well, if she could go live with the parents for a month, grandparents for a month. This implies that this is summer vacation, right? School's not a factor, right? So that means if he wanted to, he could have taken her. Because if once you remove school, he could take her with him on this trip, right? You know, and figure it out. Would it be difficult? Absolutely. But you can figure all this out, right? And so it seemed to me that it didn't make, kind of a lot of sense of like, why it was that he was, going to leave her there, not take him with her if he realized that he wanted to, if he realized he wanted to. And also I think that, and this is an aside of this whole structure of leaving her, right? That the movie did such a poor job of showing the balance between the good and the bad of fatherhood that you kind of felt that, he effectively was leaving her there forever. And you felt that he decided he was just going to quit being a father. And when he does that decision, you're not enough with, hey, well, why don't you think about all these good things that happen as part of parenting and fatherhood as well? Because the movie really doesn't display any of that to this point. That it's just been this one long, consistent nightmare, and he can't handle it, and then he's just going to give up and quit, right? And so I think that structurally, that this whole dynamic had a lot of problems in terms of not only when you think about it logically, that there are other easy solutions available, but also that the movie really didn't give you a reason to think, oh no, he should fight to try to be with his daughter. Whereas it's like he comes across at this point more as a beaten man from fatherhood, and that he's like, what, the way to make everybody happy is for me to give up, give up the most important person in my life.
The other part that really frustrated me with that is that we do jump from infant Maddie to 7-year-old Maddie. And clearly this wasn't a problem for 6 years in between. It's like, why did we have this jump? If this is such a critical issue, I mean, obviously for me, the way that I could tell the reasons that they did this is because it's much more difficult to kind of deal with this story when it's constantly an infant. But if you can have a cute little girl who, I mean, let's be honest, she is just adorable. I loved Melody Hurd as Maddie. She was just a delight every second she was on screen. That's the only reason that they do this, though. Like, I don't see any other reason other than to have these cute scenes of him trying to comb her hair and taking her to school and dealing with the dress and falling off the thing. Like, that's the only reason we jump those 6 years. So, why is this a problem then? It's like, it makes no sense story-wise. If this is a problem with him trying to figure out how to be a dad, then it all really needs to be in that first part of the film when he's actually trying to figure out how to be a dad and how to raise an infant. And that's when you're telling the story. And that's when you have this story with Marion as this conflict of interest who wants to take the baby away from him because she doesn't view him as an effective parent. And that leads to a climactic moment at the end of the film when he is like, he can do it and he's proven himself. Like, that to me would have been what the story is. Or we just kind of start when it's Maddie and he's been raising her, but now there's this conflict in his life of like, the job is growing. It's turning into an opportunity where I could go overseas, and all these different things that are potentially happening with him. And now he's like, well, how do I do this as a dad? And that gives us a different examination of fatherhood. But as it is, it's like they're trying to do both, and they're trying to have all of this in a story where the first half doesn't connect to the second half because there's all the stuff in between clearly was working. He figured it out in the beginning. It's all working. And now at the end, all of a sudden, when she's 7, he's running into these issues. To me, it made the film really just kind of disconnected. And it's just like, I don't know. It leaves me at a loss for the way that they chose to tell the story.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so it's a frustrating film. We all clearly have issues with the structure of it, with how they do it. But cast-wise, we like it. Anything else that you guys want to say about Kevin Hart and what he's doing here?
This is the thing that, there are so many comedians that make this transition to dramatic roles and do it so well. You think, Robin Williams towed that line and Tom Hanks starting off in comedy and Jim Carrey. And I thought, okay, this is Kevin Hart's, opportunity. And I see hints of it. And I feel like with a better script that we could get that out of him. And I'm excited to see this transition for him to still be able to do the comedy stuff and be funny. But there were those moments in there where I was like, okay, in a better film, I'd be in tears. And so I'm really hoping he gets another crack at a serious role, because I saw so much potential that I didn't expect from Kevin Hart. Just from his stand-up stuff that I've seen of that, I'm like, okay, his style of comedy isn't always totally my thing, but I really didn't expect the serious side, and I wish that there was an opportunity for him to go deeper into that, and that's was a big surprise to me, actually, because I thought, okay, he's gonna lean into the comedy more, and he'll make his way through the serious parts, but I feel like he did a really great job with what he was given here.
Lest we forget that Tom Hanks had Every Time We Say Goodbye. Robin Williams had.
Yes. Okay.
There were some films that he did early on in his career that where they were going down these roads of being a little more, kind of shifting their direction. They got there. They were able to kind of continue.
True. Yes.
So, Ocean, any other thoughts about Kevin?
Actually, I really had the same thoughts that Steve had, but he said it much better than I was going to. So I'm just going to say ditto.
Okay.
What Steve
Ditto.
Ditto.
Well, we already talked a little bit about Alfre Woodard. Any other thoughts on her?
I mean, underutilized. Yes. Again, so
Extremely.
But I was surprised. I was like, oh, this film's going to be, because I'll be honest, and Andy, this from you asked, hey, do you want to be on this? And I was like, I'm not really interested in this movie from the trailer. But then, at the beginning with her as Marion in that conflict, I was like, oh, this is going to be a really interesting film. And then she leaves.
She does.
And yes, Underutilized did a great job with there is a scene about the crying in the room all day, right? That was probably the only part of the movie that I really legitimately felt for a character in this, right? So, her performance there, her ability to do that, I think that, I think that what I find frustrating is, even as I praise what she did, I still find all this untapped potential, not only in her performance and the character interacting, with her story as a whole, but then also I wanted to see a little bit more of her relationship with Mike, right? They are parents of an only child who has died, right? That there is, and they're clearly dealing with this differently. Right. And that's okay. But there is still a lot there of maybe, just even a scene of them interacting with each other. Cause really, tying into how all of the different arcs of this seem to be disjointed. There are a couple scenes where they are in the same room together, but very rarely are they interacting with each other. They maybe are independently interacting with a third person in the room, or they're going into separate rooms and doing things there where it's like, well, their dynamic and how they're handling this and processing it as well, it is something that is worthy of some screen time here that is missing, right? And you have these two really good actors who are putting in really good work, and it's like, hey, maybe give them 2 minutes to have a conversation with each other.
Well, they don't do that. That's the nature of their relationship. The fact that she can hop on a plane to come out for a pediatrician visit, and say, right, "Oh, I just told Mike I'm going to the spa for the day." I mean, what is going on in that relationship? They're clearly, dealing with their grief differently, and there's some communication issues going on, which again would be an interesting dynamic for Matt to look at. Marion doesn't like Matt, and all of this, but her relationship with Mike needs work too. I mean, there's an interesting piece for her to reflect on. Did she put everything into her daughter, and what did that get her? I mean, but yeah, no, I agree. That's again, this almost could have been a series, really. Like blow it up. Let's dig into these relationships, because the cast deserves it.
Well, and then we also have the relationship, and this is one that I was a little confused on, between Matt's mom, Anna, and then with Marion and Mike, or mostly Marion, because it seemed like they were setting up potentially an interesting, a thing going on where Marion and Anna both kind of agreed that they would be better if Maddie was back with them in Minnesota. and Matthew, or moved with them or whatever, however the case may be. But they seemed to initially have this decision together. Like at first I was like, oh, it's going to be the two moms and they're going to be having these decisions that they're pushing on him. Very quickly, Anna drops out of the picture, and then she just kind of becomes a support character for Matthew. And I was kind of disappointed because I'm like, I wanted a little more from mom. Like, she has that line that she gives with Marion about like, honey's better than vinegar. And I was like, okay, so they had talked about this. There was a plan, and then it never goes anywhere. And I liked mom. I wish that she was given more, but she's like really left behind after that initial scene.
It doesn't. And this is, so in looking at the story of it, and I want to know what you guys thought, because this is where I came across with that, was that both the mothers decided Matt and Maddie needed to move back to Minnesota, right? But in that conversation, when they were on the same page, Marion switched a little bit and said Maddie needs to come back to Minnesota, right? That I think that, Matt's mom said, no, I want all of you to come back, to both of you to come back to Minnesota. And we would all, as a kind of, takes a village, we would all be together as a village to raise a child. And that she wasn't on board with splitting the father and daughter up. Whereas, and then that made it where she was kind of, I think, trying to be somewhat in the background, or a little bit of a peacemaker, or, neutral about everything. Say, no, I support my son, whatever he's going to do. I'm not on board with splitting you up, but I do want you both to come back. And I think that is kind of how I interpreted this. Now, this interpretation might be generous. You can let me know if you think that is, but I just kind of looked at it like the reason she started going into the background is because she was no longer on the same page of we want Maddie back. We don't care what happens.
But then that would have made for a more interesting film. Like, if they kept that conflict going between the moms, right? I would love to have seen that.
So my interpretation was too generous. Okay.
I mean, they do give her a little bit of, the whole thing when, Matt's talking with his mom about, his dad, having kids, dad's out of the picture, all of that stuff. So different family structures. So I can see the different approaches of, Marion and, stable family and this and that, and bring Maddie into that stability. Matt is, he's chaotic, keep him out of my controlled structured life, whereas Matt's mom is like, no, family is important. These connections, it is a challenge to do this as a single parent, and we need supports, and we need to be in this together. So yeah, it's an interesting, I mean, there was some consistency in it, again, when making a choice and the story, can fork into interesting and bland, it will always choose bland. But there again, I think that's what these actors were able to dig into. There was enough substance for them there. So yes, Ocean, probably generous, but I think, the seeds are there, as with so many things in this. It just needed nurturing in that direction.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Let's talk about Matt's friends. What do we think of Lil Rel Howery and Anthony Kerrigan as the buddies?
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'll start with Anthony Kerrigan, who is basically playing his character from Barry, and in Barry he is funnier. He's a great. I don't know if you do you watch the show Barry?
I've seen the first season of Barry.
Yeah,
yes,
the first season of Barry. Yeah, it's the Bill Hader show. And God. Anthony Kerrigan plays. It's basically the same guy. Right. And so, but in Barry, he's much funnier, and his accent, he puts on the accent a bit thicker in Barry, but and that's the same thing. And so he's the same kind of bumbling, but gets you where you want to go type guy. And so I think that his character, I thought, was kind of okay. Right. Like, he's a periphery friend. He's there. They're just work friends like that. He's going to help support him where he can. And what I did find interesting was, in a way, that friend, the work friend, supported him more in his life, right? In terms of like, okay, you want to go, hey, we know this great woman, we want to set you guys up, even though it's not a setup, which it was a setup, right? Then doing that. And then like, oh, you guys want to go on a date? We'll stay and watch Maddie for you, that and everything. And then like, even the, coming over and playing poker with the cookies and stuff like that and everything, like, I'm going to be a part of this, right? And I really like that. Lil Rel Howery, Jordan, I had more problems with. He seemed to be much more of the stereotypical friend that is, perpetually going to be 22 and doesn't understand anything else that's going on. And, it's like, hey, all right, I know you've been a single dad and your wife died and everything, but hey, did you see these girls right here? We should do that, man.
Right.
So, and it's kind of like, well, okay, you can have a friend that's like that, but then there didn't seem to be much of the other side, right? I mean, yes, he's a part of the poker games. Yes, he was there when he's trying to build up build the crib, but it really seemed much more that he was still trying to, like Jordan's character seemed to be more trying to pull him away from some of his responsibilities and being, what he was growing into, as opposed to figuring out ways to support him, but then also give him windows of, hey, every now and again, you need to let off some steam. So I'm going to be here for you for those moments too. But, I'm also going to be your friend to help you out with these things and not make things harder all the time. And I felt that the way that character was written and the beats that he was going through was very much a very stereotypical trope of, hey, we need an immature friend.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing. It's a immature friend that's there for comic relief. It wasn't even here's, Matt's, stuck being a single parent and he's on all the time and like being tempted to like, oh, let me just leave the kid with the babysitter. Let me go out with Jordan. Let me and have some conflict between, living this free life and being single again and all of that and being a parent and those responsibilities. There wasn't really any conflict. It was just, oh, let's have Jordan do something and, Matt can be like, what's wrong with you? And it's, and it's funny. That's all it became. And I thought, it's so shallow there. And when there, there's no struggle for Matt. It's just, I'm going to react and, here's my comic relief. And, with Oscar at work, I mean, he's not much of a character there. So I was really surprised at the end when they're at the airport on their way to Croatia and he's bringing Oscar along because Oscar's wife is Croatian. Oscar, can help him with that. But Matt has just gotten this, or is getting a promotion, or is moving up into his boss's position, and he basically tells Oscar, okay, you got this. And it's like, does he? I don't know that Oscar is competent enough. I haven't seen enough of him to know, and that's where I'm like, is Matt quitting his job and like, dude, you just take care of this? Or is it like, no, at work, we've seen you grow and I'm going to be promoted and you're ready to take this on and you don't need me. You're capable of handling this. I didn't get enough time with Oscar to see that because, again, he was played this really flat character for comic moments. I mean, that's all these guys was there for him to play off of and the audience to get some laughs. So, again, they executed well on what they were given to do. What they were given to do was, not much. Yeah.
Not much. Very frustrating use of both of them.
Yes.
I mean, I did like Oscar more, but just a little tiny bit.
Right. Yeah.
Because and I really like Lil Rel. I think that he's really funny in things like Get Out, where I think that his presence brings a lot to the moments that he has. Like, he really elevated his character in that film and just brought a lot of life to it. In this film, like you both have pointed out, it's like, what's he doing for the film? Like, he's creating strange conflict for Matt that feels very disconnected from how a real friend should be behaving, and that was just, it was so frustrating for me because I'm like, you could write better than this. Why are they writing it this way?
Yeah, I also even found I had a hard time understanding the dynamic of their friendship. Like, did he live with them? Did he not live with them? Because like he would pop up in weird places where it seems like, oh, you live here. Oh, wait, no, you don't live here. But it's breakfast and you're coming out in your PJs. Right. It's like, so I don't understand. Yes. I don't understand what's going on with this. And so, and also I felt that he rang fake, especially given that a lot of that stuff came, as Maddie's 7. Right. And it's like, look, if you've been you're friends this long, and he was just a friend, not a work friend. So that means their interactions were as friends. Over that 7-year period, you would understand, hey, some things have changed here. Like you would be able to kind of incorporate more into that. It wouldn't be that you did not grow at all as a person. Right. But maybe that's, part of the problem with the structure of the movie as a whole. That, you know, there's lots of parts we've been speaking earlier about Matt's character not really fully growing as much as a character. And so it seemed like they didn't grow either. And so Oscar, and again, this might have been my generous interpretation. I thought the end was he was saying, hey, because he'd been trying earlier to get Oscar higher up in the company and things like that to do stuff. And I think he was like saying, hey, this specific project really is meant for you. So instead of me going and kind of being like, you know, help, you know, kind of like you're either Shadow or helping you, not Shadow, but helping you do this, that, hey, you're just going to go ahead and do it, right? And then that's going to be your promotion. Then I'll keep my job because I'm now the boss for reasons.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and so maybe that's what that was. But yeah, I think that it was, the Friends characters is emblematic of the problems of the rest of the film where we're not seeing growth over the 7-year period.
Yeah. No, and I think that speaks to, I think, just one of these, it's a storytelling challenge and an editing challenge of, you know, we've got a structure where things we don't see basically don't exist. You know, it's like when you have that scene of like, oh, there's somebody and they're walking with a friend and they're like walking out of the house and they're having a conversation, and then it cuts to they're in the car driving down the road and like 10 minutes have passed, but they're like right at the next point in the conversation. It's like, what have you been doing for the past 10 minutes? It's like this. What have you been doing for the past 7 years? Well, since the audience doesn't see it, it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And that seems like so much of this, like, oh, it's funny to have him come in his, you know, pajamas at breakfast and all that. It's like, no, well, where have you been? You know, are you living there? The film has no concept of anything outside of any of the scenes that we are presented with. It doesn't exist. There's no logic to anything. It's just a sequence, and it goes back to how the stories don't relate, you know, our story arcs don't connect to each other because each scene just is an isolated event in time and space. And we're just given all of them sort of strung together.
And to me, it was like Hollywood's worst ideas of a father, of a male who just doesn't know who's clueless when it comes to raising a child, over and over again, just consistently hitting us over the head with it. Well, all right. Clearly, we had issues with this film. Let's rank it. What do you both think as far as Letterboxd out of 5 stars? And by the way, for all of you listeners out there, if you're interested in getting a pro or patron level subscription at Letterboxd, you can get a 20% discount if you go to thenextreel.com/Letterboxd. You can get that discount applied to your membership, and it also works on renewals. So get signed up. So let's go around, let everybody know, where do you sit with your rating on this? Ocean.
I think that the verbal description of my rating of this can be summed up by the first 3 words Matt says in the film, and that is, well, this sucks. So
great opening line. I did like that.
Yes,
exactly. Yes. Which really sets the mood, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, all right. So anyway, so I think that, okay, so for me, I had so many problems with this movie. We've discussed quite a few of them, not only structurally, thematically, like even little parts of things that didn't make any sense to me. Like, you know, we didn't even discuss, like, why does he have this high-powered job but he can't afford childcare? I don't understand that. Right, you know, so there's so many aspects of this film that I have issues with. And so for me, it's a movie that I neither laughed nor cried, and I don't ever want to see again. So I give it, the acting was good, so 1.5 stars.
1.5 stars. Steve, what, and no Hart, then I'm assuming. Right?
Oh, no. I'm not watching this again.
All right. Steve, how about you?
I agree with everything Ocean said. I don't totally agree with the rating. And because, again, it's a competently executed film. There's story problems.
Is it though?
Well, let me say this:
just because they know how to put, I say film in the camera, it doesn't really apply. But you know, just because they know how to put a card in the camera,
yes, I know,
and put lights up.
Given the script, you know, so that's the thing. This is what I'm shooting. This is what I have to work with. There's huge story problems. I'm only giving it 2 stars. I'm not giving it 3 or 3.5. But to go below 2, I have to really be offended. And there was nothing. It frustrated me, but it wasn't. It didn't make me angry. I was disappointed. So I go with a 2 on that. It's not a heart. No likes on this one. I'm not going to watch it again. I wouldn't encourage anybody to watch it again. I think there are other movies that execute on this better. And one of the things that I thought about as I was watching this was I made fun of the Yes Day trailer, but I really, really enjoyed that movie. And it had a whole lot more things to say about challenges of being a parent than this movie did. Because after telling you I'm not really interested in seeing it, and I watched the trailer again, and then I thought, no, Yes Day surprised me. Maybe Fatherhood will surprise me. And it did. It did surprise me with how much it failed to tell a story. 2 stars.
I feel 2 stars is still too generous for all of that.
Okay.
It's just so frustrating because I feel like you've got an incredible group of actors here delivering, they all do well with the performances that they are given based on the script that they're provided. But the script is just a problem from beginning to end. And I just don't think that they ever really push to do anything with this. And it just feels like the worst example of Hollywood putting a script together to tell this story. And it's not doing anything new. And what it's doing is worse than what's been done before. So for me, this is a 1-star film. No Hart.
Okay. So let me ask you a question. If both of you guys, if you weren't watching this for the show, for this podcast, and you decided to put it on, would you have turned it off, or was it entertaining enough where you thought, I'm interested to see where this goes?
The only reason I finished was for the podcast.
Okay.
Like my entire family, we all watched it together, and 45 minutes in, we were like, there's another hour of this movie left. We were done.
Okay.
And I told my kids, I was like, yeah, I thought this would be fun for us to watch. If you guys want to bail. They didn't, right? And I stayed for the podcast, but yeah, no, I'd have bailed.
Okay. Andy, would you have bailed?
I can count on one hand how many films that I have turned off or left in the middle of. Very rarely will I do that. I generally will always finish unless I'm just just bothered by what I'm witnessing.
Okay.
It's, this is not one I would have finished this. I still would feel the same, but I would have just buckled down and finished it.
Okay. Because for me, to get down to 1 star would be like, I'm not finishing this movie. It's a waste of my time. And I didn't feel that it was a waste of my time. I'm not going to watch it again, but yeah. So that's why I'm 2. There was enough. I think the talent dragged me through this. Is what happened. So okay.
I would pay to watch DeWanda Wise and Kevin Hart together in another rom-com.
Oh,
they had magic in that in their performance. I loved them on screen together. Just fantastic. It's just not this film. This film is very frustrating example of what a story about fatherhood could and should be. So, well, both of you, thanks so much for coming on to talk about this fun Father's Day film. Really appreciate it. But honestly, I do love just chatting with you both.
As a father, I would say when you're going to talk about challenges of fatherhood, where's the toddler years? Where's those years? Because to me, everyone talks about terrible twos. No, ages 3 and 4. That's the drama. That's the dynamic. And
3's the worst.
Yeah, I guess getting child actors of that age is probably a big hurdle. By 7, you can give direction to that. Infants just need to be there. 3 and 4, working with kids can be tough. And to me, I was like, if you want to show the worst of fatherhood, then dig into those, age 3 and 4 years.
Oh my God. 3 is the worst. 3 is the only year where you do actively start to contemplate, if I murder this child, will I get away with it? Right? Because 3 is horrible. I mean, you don't. You make it through, you love him and stuff like that. But at 3, there's those creeping moments of where you're like, we could just leave him on the side of the road and just, just drive away. So.
There's definitely a period.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. And again, in the 7-year-old period, I'm like, this was not a problem. Why is this such a problem here in this film? But anyway, that's the show. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget, remember, we have an online community with fellow movie lovers. You can learn more at thenextreel.com/discord. And if you're interested in supporting us to help keep the lights on and get some great benefits while you're at it, head to thenextreel.com/membership. We do monthly member bonus episodes. We did A Quiet Place Part 2 earlier this month. And next month is our hiatus. We're not going to be doing any more shows after next week's show, which will be F9. But next month we will have a hiatus episode. We're going to be talking about Black Widow, which should be a fun one. And remember, this is an important thing to that we're trying to get out into the world. If your Next Reel feed is too full, remember, this is our master feed, and we now have individual feeds for all of our shows. So if you want to just be listening to the Film Board episodes, you can subscribe to just the Film Board feed and just listen to these episodes as they come out. Same thing with all the rest of our shows. Don't forget to do the stuff you're supposed to do with your podcasts: rate, review, subscribe, and of course, listen. But perhaps most important, and something we don't say often enough, please share. Any of those movie lovers in your life, just tell them about the show. It's great getting new people to tune in. As I said, coming up next week, we have the latest Fast and Furious film, F9. Thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned.
The world has a way of changing. And we change too.
I know some people, they would die for me.
There are moments that separate us.
They're my family.
But we always come back together.
We heard y'all needed a little love out here.
Y'all ever thought about the wild missions we've been on? We've taken out planes, trains, tanks. I'm not going to even think about the submarine. And now we got cars flying in the air? Who is he?
Jacob is Dom's brother.
Been a long time, Dom. Little brother.
You always say never turn your back on family, but you turned your back on me. Now your little family is in my world.
Are you ready?
Whatever's on you,
Is you ready?
it's on us.
Are you ready?
He's got his own private army. We need help.
Bring what you got.
No way.
Is you ready? Oh, whole squad ready.
So how do y'all want to play this?
Fast.